Welcome to Local SEO Tactics. I am your producer, Caleb Baumgartner, here to bring you part 2 of our 2-part interview with schema expert Terry Samuels. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, jump into our last episode for a lot of excellent information. If you're looking to understand schema, but find it complicated, we're here to explain it so that you could dominate your local rankings. Also, before we hop into this episode, we'd like to take a moment to remind folks that we're collecting feedback on our upcoming digital courses. If you'd like to shape our course program and decide which courses we offer first, go to localseotactics.com/courses to take our quick survey. We would love to hear from you. And with that, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. Enjoy the show.
Well, I think something Bob and I talk about, you mentioned Google My Business, GMBs earlier, and I'll draw an analogy. We always tell people, if you're a local SEO, you've got to be doing that. It's completely free. And this is a spot where Google says, here's a thing, fill it out and communicate to us who you are, what you do, and like fill the database. They have the doors wide open. I think schema is very similar in that, like they've designed this language, if you will, this schema to say, hey, communicate to us better who you are, what you do, and all these things. Take advantage of that because that's why they developed it, is so they can understand you better. But then B, we kind of touched on it earlier. I think everybody needs to know, just like your on-page SEO, the schema, this is a page by page thing. You mentioned you can do like organization schema. That's all your pages on your website have this, but you still have to make sure it's on every page that you want it on. And then like you mentioned about the Dr. Brown, he has like a page about himself. He has pages about individual services. These all are going to have their own schemas based on the type of page it was, right? And it's not a blanket thing here. This is a page by page, just like your keyword optimization is page by page.
Exactly. The only thing that's a blanket, and sometimes it doesn't work, I mean, I don't run across it very often, but the only thing that the one consistency is the site-wide schema. The site-wide schema is overall, top of umbrella, who are you, what do you do, and how can you help me? And that's relevant on every page. It doesn't matter if it's a doctor page or a page about x-rays. It still has to do with the underside of the umbrella. And then, like you said, it goes from page to page. So I typically will start with location pages because geo right now is more important than service. A year ago or 2 years ago, the service might have been more important than geo. So now I think that's swapped because of just basically how robust maps have gotten. So I'm going to build the location page, the location schema first, and most times, most sites don't have a location page. Well, guess what? I'm going to be building a location page to put my location schema on. And it's going to be everything about that location and very little to do about my service for that location because I've got service pages that's going to do that. So and then you get into the services. So there's a definite hierarchy as far as what scheme is important to build. And the site-wide obviously is the most important. Get that done, get it loaded, and let Google do its thing while you build out the rest of it. And just take it, like I said, I probably spend, well, on the one I'm getting ready to do for you guys, it's probably a day's worth of research. Before I even write schema, I'm searching for stuff. What is out there about this client? What is out there about this person? What is good out there about this person? What is bad? Where are reviews at? Everybody says, oh, I've got reviews at Google. Well, most people have reviews in a lot more places than Google. And so you want to pull those links in if they're good. Obviously, don't listen if they're bad. But anything that's good out there, you want to bring in because I guarantee Google hasn't put the two together. They have maybe from a broad search term, but they haven't put it together as far as this review links to your homepage, that link, because a lot of those are no follow links. Well, if you have a no follow link and all of a sudden you put that URL in your schema, you're going to get a lot more credit for it, even though it's a no follow. Sure. So again, and that's the biggest reason why I think a lot of people don't do advanced schemas because of the time it takes to research. It's not just a plumber. Well, plumber Bob might not have nothing about him, but wait till you get to tankless hot water heaters. Each service is going to have a different research section. You can't just put in there, oh, here's my service for tankless hot water heaters. Well, you probably should put in there what brand you carry, what, all the stuff that's going to help you be better than Bob down the street. You want to make sure that's in your schema, because again, you're not going to put that in the front. Right. You're going to put the front side that we do these 40 different types of water heaters. Some people will put the top 2 or 3 or whatever, but in schema, you can do a lot more. So, and you can really even dive down into one. I've got people that do like tankless hot water heaters, and I'll do a brand schema if they want to specialize in, GE. So we'll do a brand GE schema page, and all to pump up this tankless hot water heater. So, you think of it as it goes right along with our silo system. Yeah. I silo everything before I do anything, because that's typically, I think on the on-page side, I think that's the most important thing people can do, is make sure your site is siloed right. And like we talked about, because of crawl budget, right. Crawl is a real thing. If you can get rid of 100 pages and convert them into 10, you just doubled your crawl budget. So, right. And now you include schema on top of that, and the schema might satisfy the bots. One thing that we haven't been able to test, because it's almost an impossible test, is maybe Google goes through your schema and they are satisfied with what they see and they leave. They're like, hey, I'm good. I understand this page. I understand this brand. I understand this person. I understand this service. I don't need to go down and see other stuff. We don't know that that's happening, but if it does, hopefully they're going down below there and seeing the same stuff, but different, so I'm a big believer, if you can, to have different text in both areas, have different text and schema than you do on the page.
Right.
Sometimes it's not feasible because it just sounds stupid, but you try.
Yeah. Just another spot to input all this information. I think people may not realize it too, but I'll ask you this, like with regards to schema, you mentioned earlier, you can kind of put your reviews in there and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of gone away over the last year or so, but if everybody remembers, if you would go do a Google search like a year ago, you'd have a bunch of listings in the naturals that would show stars, like their actual review ratings. Even if you're like 5th down the page, if you were the only one that had stars showing up, you're probably getting some clicks because it was just sexy and it stood out. I think that's a tangible way. I don't know if you have any other examples, Terry, but just I had this as a thing to tell everybody, like a tangible way to see how schema actually comes back around to Google. Like you had to put on your website, here's how many stars, or I'm sorry, here's what our rating was, here's how many reviews, and you had to do it the right way. Kind of like you're saying, they had to test it. They had to see that the reviews were on the page and whatnot. But if you did that properly, then they would show your review rating within the Google search. That's how they got that information. They didn't look at your page or your Yelp listing or something and say, here's how many reviews they got and what their rating is. They pulled that from the schema that you would input onto your page and then pass their tests to do that. Is that it's kind of gone away a little bit because everybody totally abused that and they scaled back. But I'm hoping you're going to tell everybody how to fix that and get that done for them here today on the podcast.
The aggregate ratings got hammered, and Google just pretty much did away with them.
Yeah.
You can still see some of them out there, but they're lingering out there, typically on sites that haven't been touched in a long time. And, they just, as soon as somebody touches their site, those are going to disappear. But schema is the only way that you can get what we call zero rank. Some people call it rich snippets. I call it zero rank. Schema is a big part of that. Schema will also bring in your menu system under a search result. So it'll bring in a link to your homepage and a link to your about or your web design or your internet marketing page or whatever. I'm kind of just looking at all the different stuff I have. It'll bring the knowledge graph in. Knowledge graph is tough to do, but a lot of that is through the schema because it's stuff that, a good picture of you, different awards or accolades or different things you belong to. And, but all that stuff done through schema. And it's, like I said, but you still get, I still get stuff, even on my own site that I'll have reviews on the page, and so I'll put the reviews in schema, and I'll get one review to show up in the search results. I won't get the stars, but I'll get one review, a snippet of that review. And so again, schema is just one of those things that gives Google more options to show about you on your page, on the search. So, because you can't see it anywhere else. You go to the front side of the pages that we do schema on, they don't look any different than any other time, but what shows up in search of what gives Google an idea, that's how you get videos to show up on the search page. So it's through the schema. Again, if you don't include some of this stuff, Google doesn't know to include it. So Google used to do a lot of guessing. I say within the last 18 months again, that Google's gotten really good at what they're doing with showing more information about the people that are searching for certain people, services, or products or whatever. Right. So, and again, I do believe that the people that are really using schema the right way and testing it even further are just going to keep going hands over fists over everybody else. So, like product schema, when you're doing e-commerce between product and brand and review, and I mean, you can get into some serious stuff because it's, one of the things about products is WooCommerce, or depending on what you use, you don't really want to have a huge description. You got a short description, you got a regular description. Well, schema, you can have 1,000-word description. Again, because it's not going to affect how your product page looks.
Right.
A lot of problems with product pages. I'm an old HTML guy, so product pages for me were easy. But on the WordPress side or Drupal or whatever side, product pages shift just by one sentence being longer than the other. All of a sudden, the images shifted, 20 pixels. So again, we figured out that, okay, we don't need to fight with clients anymore. We can just put what we need to do up in schema and they'll never know. So, again, it's all stuff that's just made our job be easier, especially in client reviews, because trying to explain to a client why they need 2,500 words of text and that we're going to hide some stuff in accordions and, it's going to still look good. I mean, it just gets to be monotonous, especially when they're more visual person than they are text person. So, but again, schema just gives us an opportunity to do that, which I'm super thankful for. It's actually, I've been doing SEO for 10 years. Is actually the one thing I'm most excited about. I'm more excited about this than I was when I started doing mass page builds. And I was pretty excited back then when I was doing those. But I think schema, just because it can be so exciting to freaking see, and it's almost instant results. That's the cool thing about it too. It's, we see results right away. As unless you're changing the silo structure, that always takes a little bit. But
sure.
But if you don't have schema at all, and you're a chiropractor and you put a medical clinic schema on or medical business schema site-wide on yours, just that alone is going to help drive, the authority and the trust to your keyword structure.
Yeah. Like you said, you just communicated to Google more about what you did, right? So as long as you're not doing it in a completely untangential way or
don't be stupid with it.
Yeah.
Don't put in there the word chiropractor 15 different ways. I mean, you still want your text to be grammatically correct. You still want it to be readable. It doesn't, I guess if you can put maybe some fun content up there better than you could on your public page, but it still needs to make sense. It still needs to flow. It's Google's smarter than that. I don't care what anybody says. We still do a lot of spinning on different objects, but we don't do it as far as client sites. So we do it through syndication and stuff like that, where it really doesn't matter out there.
Well, you said Google's smart, man. I think we take for granted sometimes, especially if we're in the SEO industry, we almost work against Google or we're trying to game it, but we take for granted how amazingly powerful it is as a service, like as a consumer. Like you said, they did a lot of guessing before. They still do guessing now. They're just damn good at it compared to you can just type in a couple words. And if you think about, they just instantly know what you're talking about, right? Usually, right? Yeah. And this schema is kind of a big part of them kind of parse all this out to connect all these billions and trillions of bits of information out there on the web you're able to kind of use schema as glue for your pages, for your entity, for your brand. Say, hey, all these things, like you said earlier, this LinkedIn, this Yelp, this is all me, so anything you're finding on those pages is also me. And now you're getting this relationship between all that data, boom, onto your web page. And users aren't perturbed by it because they don't see it. It's not distracting from a user experience standpoint. So
totally
super, super powerful.
Yeah.
Couple more quick questions for you. So schema is changing and evolving and getting more sophisticated. Like you said, you go through, let's just say you do all your pages, you hit your local page. Your location page, you get your local business schema, some service pages. How often should somebody, and in future episodes, we're going to help people how to do it and get deeper into some of these. So this doesn't have to be crazy in depth, but how often should they revisit it to update it, to see if there's some new element they can call out, maybe within their location, local business schema? Quarterly, once a year? How often should they revisit it once it's set?
It really depends on, first of all, you need to find a way to know that there's a change that happens, negative or positively. And a lot of times you don't find out about that unless you're following or, you're in a group. Like I'm thinking about actually starting a group of just schema only, because I don't have any way to tell all the different people that I've talked to about schema if I find something new that works. So, and for them to find it, is probably not going to happen because they either don't have the right testing environment. I'm fortunate. I've got hundreds of websites that I test with. So, and they're all within my niches that I'm in. So when I say something works for a roofing company, it works for a roofing company. So, but then on the geo side is the side that's the one that's changing the most. So on the geo side, I'll notice something here in Phoenix area that will typically work in other areas, but I don't test that much in the geo side because it's really too slow of a test, to be honest with you. The geo side is changing so fast, so rapidly that to do a test geo related only, you probably wouldn't get a good variable result anyways. So the best thing to do is to, like I said, follow somebody. I'm thinking about the only thing I don't like about the Facebook group is just Facebook itself. So but the idea of having a place that you can go and tell people, like we found a new site, like everybody's familiar with Wikipedia. Wikipedia links are everywhere. They're always everybody's Wikipedia, and then you get the productology. Those are the two most powerful column authoritative links in almost every niche in the world. Well, we found another one about 3 weeks ago, and it's an old HTML site that for some site's like 30 years old, but for some reason it has some super power. And so now we're including that third link into the Wikipedia productology, and then this new one. But this new one, we haven't tested enough as far as like we've tested on the roofing side and the lawyer side. So we're still kind of testing some different variables at it, but it's something that we're confident enough to say, hey guys, you could add this in to where Google will now crawl this freaking ugliest sin damn website, but it has every freaking city that we can find in the world. It has a little page for them, so instead of getting, we're included to getting the Phoenix Wikipedia page and the Phoenix productology page. We're also grabbing this Phoenix page. That's, if you don't forgive me, I'm not saying it because I don't want to say it. I'm saying it because I don't remember the DB something. Anyways, but that's like an example of something that would work for everybody, but then going out and implementing it on 300-page website, is it worth it? I don't have a friggin' clue. So a lot of the stuff when my templates change, like I've got a template, I have about 10 people that have bought my template package from me, and anybody that buys the template package, I give updates to if they want to add to their templates. But once you have a template, that's what I tell people. Once you hire me to do schema, you don't have to rehire me next year to do another service because you have all the templates. You just change the variables yourself. But yeah, that's the only, that you're right. It changes a lot. Well, and I say that it probably hasn't changed in the past 2 months very much at all. So we're hoping it's gotten pretty good as far as it's very stable. Google came back and said they're keeping the testing tool, because we're all out there trying to find a different thing to use instead of the testing tool, because you have to test this stuff before you load it.
Right.
And then you also have to make sure you have Google Search Console installed in case there is errors, because even though the testing tool will tell you it's good, Search Console might still give you an error warning. So,
well, like you said, it's one open or close bracket or one comma or one semicolon in the wrong spot or omitted can just screw the whole damn thing up. So testing it to know if you missed that with your eyes is definitely a requisite.
Yeah, that's important for sure. And it can be, like the only penalty that we've ever seen with Schema is review penalty. I tell people, unless you want to play in the review world, just don't even use them. Because we haven't found a significant greater advantage to doing anything review related except for products. Services, like I said, we really haven't found a good thing. Products, yes. But ever since they took away the aggregate rating, it seems like they've just kind of, at least the connection between outside GMB, we really think Google's kind of broke that, authority, trust, whatever, because it was abused so much. It was heavily abused. I mean, I got on one site, this guy had like 1,500 freaking reviews and he had 4. Right. Like, dude, what the frick,
Because you can just input whatever you wanted.
Input whatever you want, it'll show up on the stars, but you click on it and the guy's got 4 freaking reviews, right. So it was making Google look bad too, which, is never a good thing.
Right.
So, and so that's why, reviews is something that we're constantly keeping an eye out. Because I was just like you said, I got so many leads being at the bottom of page 1, but I was the only one on the page with stars.
Right. Yeah, it just stands out like a sore thumb.
So, but again, we hope something of the sort comes back. But you watch websites like Neil Patel and Moz, and that's where the stars are going to start showing up first. And we're still not seeing them. We probably click through there every month or so to see if anything's come up, and then we can reverse engineer it. But right now, it's not. It's Neil Patel's friggin' schema is such a joke. I keep wanting to friggin' reach out to him and say, hey, dude, let me. Because he's got the most popular blog post about schema, and the schema is a freaking joke.
Go figure. Plumber with the leaky pipes, right? So
yeah, exactly. So
I think so. Moral of the story for what you're saying there is, I mean, yeah, schema will update, but if I'm putting words in your mouth a little bit and paraphrasing, like if it updates, it's more like there's a new thing you can use. It's not going to update and like break your site somehow. It's just more of, are there new things you could take advantage of? Pay attention to that. Or if you're hooked into somebody like yourself, make sure you're getting alerted from them. But it can be somewhat set it and forget it. Now, there's always a danger there because your competition, if you outrank your competition, they're going to come back and say, what do we got to do? They may outplay you with some updated schema and you got to, come back then. But nobody's really in any danger then of having their schema get broken because some schema thing updated. It's just whether you're using that feature or not.
It's what you're using the feature, how it's built. Like I said, it's, when we've switched from going to the website as the power to the GMB as the power, it kind of changed everything for us because it's, nobody ever thought of that before. I mean, the GMB has always just been something to be the map, make sure it's embedded, make sure you link it, blah, blah, blah. But now that we're doing a lot of the machine ID type stuff, that's all through Google My Business. All that machine ID stuff is through Google My Business. And almost every single search term has a machine ID. So now we're capturing all those and putting them into the schema. So if one of the terms for a plumber is water heater, well, we're grabbing that water heater, machine ID link and putting it right into the schema because it's relevant, it's topical, it's everything that has to do with the page. So, but that's typically the biggest thing that we've seen change, like I said, is on the connection between the schema and the GMB. And so we're doing a big test right now of, okay, I've got 2 GMBs and I actually want 10, playing the game that we all play. Well, I'm seeing if I can take these 2 locations and build 10 with just schema through machine ID. So the machine ID isn't going to be exactly attached to me or one of the maps. but it'll be attached to me and the location. So I don't know. I'm going to see if it works. I don't know. It depends. We're all trying to find ways to not have so many maps because so many get canceled and, you know, depleted.
Right.
And if we can do that through a semi-silo system in Schema, I don't know. It makes sense to me. It might work, you know, but we'll see. It's just, you know, for Google to sit there and say, Mr. Plumber in, you know, Plano, Texas, you can't go anywhere outside Plano. That's stupid to me. That's like the one dumb thing Google does. So,
right.
Because even though that their office might be 5 miles into the next town, they're still the best plumber within 10 miles. So anyway, so that's the big test I'm doing right now. It'll probably, you know, go till the summer. But I'm really trying to see how much I can exploit through Schema, the one-page website, and then these 2 locations. So it's going to be an interesting test. But again, it's just that's the type of test that we do. That's the type of test that if it works, you know, everybody needs to know about it because it's something now you can, you know, quit spending money on maps that only last a month or 2. You know, now a new way to, you know, it might not be perfect, but it might get us into, you know, 5 of the locations instead of 10.
Well, I think this topic there highlights 2 things, themes from earlier in the conversation. I think very, very well. One is that you got to be testing, right? Like you gotta keep testing to find out what works, you know, to leverage it.
And you can't be scared to test. I get so many people, I'm scared to test. Well, get properties that you're not scared to lose.
Yeah.
So go out and, you know, buy a domain, you know, preferably you know, an auction domain. I'm not a big expired domain guy, but go buy a cheap auction domain as a test site, you know, get some cheap hosting on it, put a one-page website on it, connect it to all the Google properties and test it. Just start doing stuff to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's the only way you learn. And if you test on a client site and it goes bad, you know, I mean, I'm going to end up getting it. And now I've got to charge this client a lot of money just to get it back to 0. You know, our game's all about 0 and up. If we get websites that are less than 0, we've got to charge to get it to 0.
Right.
And that's not a very pleasant phone call, especially if somebody just, you know, had a bad experience. But
and it probably wasn't a free experience either.
Exactly.
And I think the other part that, like I said, that underscores is if you're using Yoast or something like that, like a canned software or plugin solution, these things you're talking about, the testing, maybe the manipulation and getting really in depth, you don't have that ability. You're beholden to kind of the fields they have or what they've decided that you can implement for your schema, and to really take advantage of this and, you know, get ahead of your competition in Google, learn it, immerse it, or hire a professional who's doing that if you're not. But I think that really underscores that part of it too. You can't just throw Yoast on there. It has schema, you know, so you're good to go. There's so many parts of it that's not even going to touch or even keep up with, because they're doing their testing, like you just mentioned. So this is January, we're recording this. You're talking about a test you're doing going through summer. Yeah. I mean, if Yoast is going through a similar process, let's say, that's going to be a while before they release that to you, you know, and you're so far downstream, it's old news by then. So I think that's probably a good point to kind of pause this, cut off this episode, unless you want to share some more, or if Bob, you have more questions, because I think everything going forward here is really going to get into those details for the future episodes of how do you do it? Where do you do it? Why do you do it? How do you construct it? And some of that. I think this was pretty good for everybody for what the heck is schema and kind of parsing that out a little bit. I think it's a good time to mention to everybody, like on the front side, you've got a question for Terry. He's going to come on again. We're going to dive deeper into this. If you got a question that's in that deeper dive, or if there's something that we mentioned here that was just kind of quickly glazed over, you want to revisit, even if it's on the basic level, go localseotactics.com, down to the bottom, submit a question. Again, mention schema, mention Terry. Those are going to be synonymous in the same topic here going forward. And we'll get that stuff answered and highlighted for everybody. So I'm sure there's some things like this mysterious third website Terry's not mentioning to go with Wikipedia that we're going to hold back or not going to learn all the secrets in testing. But I think Terry's really going to dump a ton of knowledge on everybody. You're talking about like the machine learning ID and the GMB ID within Schema. I remember that's one thing literally for me, like a light bulb went off when you taught that. I think this last year at SEO spring training, which I attended. It was like, holy crap, this is never even thought of that. Like you said, this is a website. This is who we are. This is the entity, if you will. But bringing that GMB in, that's a Google property. Like they know that, they trust that. It's like the VIP entrance for communication on that. So little tidbits like that is where I'm excited for you to come on again and really help people. Because you threw out a number before, but most competitors aren't doing this kind of stuff or aren't doing it at the level you can in Schema. And if you're trying to break through in your area, your market, your niche, your geographic location, Schema is going to be a secret weapon, I think, for a lot of people. So
I agree.
Do you have anything else, Terry, you wanted to add? Anything we might have missed or
no, I'm excited. I'm thankful you guys asked me to do this. Like I said, it is passionate, a big passion of mine between siloing and Schema, and mainly just because I've always said that, if we don't take advantage of the time Google gives us or any bot gives us, then we're just out there fluttering in the wind. And and I do believe it's something that most SEOs don't really pay attention to or don't think about of, why is it taking my website 8 months to rank? Well, maybe we've got some crawl problems, so, right. And that's stuff that, it's Google's not making it easy for us to find out about this type of stuff. So it makes more sense to me than to fight Google on that side. Fine, you give me an opportunity to put all this stuff in the head before you even get to the potential problems. I'm going to take advantage of it. And so we've just taken the time to see what components work better than others. What are some of the most common out there that we've seen, and which kind of sets everything apart. And then really tying in the Google properties. GMB is one of them. Google gives us a business site. Google gives us a Google site. They give us all of these Google properties that obviously are going to index. They're obviously very powerful if you want to start talking different UR, UL, blah, blah, blah. And so why not start tying those to our websites?
Right.
So, it just makes more sense to me than to introduce Google that way to my property than it would be hoping Google finds me, and hopefully Google will put the 2 and 2 together.
Right.
Well, let's kind of force the issue.
Yeah. Like take advantage of it, or like you said a few times, exploit it, not in a negative way, but in a, leverage it way, utilize it way. So,
they're exploiting us every freaking day. We're giving them all the content they ever need. So yeah. We might as well try to get some back.
Yeah, newsflash, if nobody's paid attention, Google has a little bit of cash laying around from all of us, giving them content and using their devices. So
totally
turnabout is fair play. Bob, did you have any more questions to follow up with Terry? Or
well, and hopefully this might be one that you have to cut if it's too goofy. But I mean, Terry, are you looking at do you have a way to look at competitors' schema, or is that something you have to get in their code?
Yeah, we can look at their schema. I've got a tool that'll scrape any website and tell me all the schema that's on it. Okay. And I can go in and I can take that schema and I can see what I don't like about it. I can see what they're doing differently. That's pretty much how I built my first library. The problem was finding anybody that did good schema. So I had a bunch of little schemas. I call them better than Yoast schemas. So they were Yoast plus. Right. They weren't anything yet. So, because like I said, when I started doing this, I was basically still the way I am today, text files. So I have a library full of probably 600 different text files of 600 different schemas that I've done. And it all started with going out and trying to find how everybody else placed it together, because there wasn't anything out there to show you, so, and it matters within the schema where you place the image compared to where you place the abouts, because the way and this stuff Google doesn't tell you, it's like an algorithm update. Oh, sorry, you got hit with an algo update, but we're not going to tell you why. Well, same thing in schema. They just tell you it doesn't work. So now you're looking at all this schema, right, and you're going, wait a minute, it's only showing like half of the schema. Well, because you put an image schema in the wrong place. And that's the part that's so frustrating about one of the biggest reasons why there'll never be a good schema tool. There's some good ones out there now that are getting better, but they give you a better than Yoast platform. And now you need to go out and make it better than better. And again, the way the templates are important is because it took so much time to find out what segments and properties went where, and make sure that, like professional service is one of the biggest schemas out there. Well, they're doing away with it. Well, it's causing a mass panic everywhere, because professional service is what a web design company would use, or an internet marketing company, or a copier company, that we all started out as professional services because that was the broad schema that matched us all. We weren't medical, we weren't construction, that type of stuff. So now everybody's panicking. So we've gone back to local business site-wide. And the reason we did that is because it tested better than everything else. So, so until Google gives us a different option, which we think they're going to start adding to the business type levels. So once they give us a different option, then on the site wide anyways, we're just sticking with local business on my site. So, but it tested the best. Before I was just putting local business on my Phoenix page or my Tempe page or whatever. So now I've done a local business site wide, and I've done more service type stuff on the local pages, organization type stuff. But that type of thing, when we hear something that's being depleted, again, we don't know when, because Google never tells us. Right. Is the other thing. It's being depleted. Well, so we're trying to be ahead of the game, because that will flag it in Google Kurzall. Let's say they do cut that out tonight at midnight. Everybody that has professional service schema will get an error message in Google Search Console the next day. So now you've got a bunch of schemas out there that just aren't working. So, but that's the type of stuff that it'd be nice to have an outlet for, to let everybody know, hey guys, this is a change coming. Here's some different options that we found have worked. Here's some different options that we found that would probably work if you want to test, that type of thing. So, and I'm trying to get Clint to go in the Facebook group with me, just because I don't want to do it all by myself. But because I think it is important. Like you said, it's some of the updates isn't something that you're going to run to and make changes on every site, but it'd be nice to implement it on the next site or the next page or the next blog. And if you see a big boost from that one, then you can justify taking the time to go back, because it is a time thing. I get people all the time, well, I'm only, we do a lot of white label SEO. And so I get people all the time that say, well, I only got $600 a month from this guy. Well, you're not going to do much schema with $600 a month. It's just the money and the time is not there. And especially if you're going to, with all the other stuff you have to do, and sure. Don't do on page to just do schema. Schema should always be after on page, but that's just because I'm an old school guy. So, but I think they're both so important.
Yeah, you mentioned text files. This is another thing that stuck with me that you taught me, or at least turned me onto it in SEO spring training. If anybody out there is messing with this, or you use text files, I'm a Windows guy, not a Mac guy. So I'd use the Notepad built in. Notepad++ was like a game changer for doing this kind of stuff, like with that search and replace function and some other stuff. It's like a supercharged version of Notepad. So anybody out there listening, if you use just text editors and stuff, or text files, check out that Notepad++. That was a super cool little pro tip too. Terry shared before. So
yeah, and I keep text files on everything. They're like because they're so easy to save.
Yeah.
Word documents get to be a little bit, monotonous, and you always have to have Word. But I've got text files for all different stuff, not just schemas, project infos, and tips and tricks that I read. Yeah. I'll keep a text file and put stuff in there. And,
I just like not having to worry about. It's kind of like whatever it be, Steve Jobs or Barack Obama. These guys are somewhat famous for like wearing the same things all the time.
Yeah,
and just so they didn't have to have the decision on what to choose.
Right.
I like these text files. I don't care what font it is or the size or the headings. I just type it up, and it may not look super cool for somebody, but the information was there in like super fast, super efficient way. So not schema related. Well, in a roundabout way it is, because that's where you can save. Like you said, once you figure out what works and it passes the structured data testing tool, copy that son of a bitch, paste it into a text file and save it so you don't screw it up, because one little comma somewhere is gonna ruin your day.
Exactly.
All right, Bob, any other questions or tidbits?
Nope. I look forward to the testing, and obviously, getting more, this is great information from Terry down the road.
Yeah.
So
100%. All right, I'm going to read Terry. I'm sure you're an avid listener to our podcast, catch every episode. So right now I'm going to be reading a 5-star review we got submitted from a listener. We do that on every episode. So this episode, we got a good 5-star review from Michael Hansen. It says, I've just discovered the podcast and can't soak up the knowledge fast enough. The content is so straightforward, easy to understand, and they put it into practice. I hope to team up with them and return the favor for all the great wisdom they provide. Thanks, Michael. Really appreciate the review. As everybody knows, you keep believing them. We're going to keep reading them every episode. Go to localseotactics.com. Again, down at the bottom, click on the button for reviews. We make it easy. Jump over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Google My Business, wherever you want to leave a review, Facebook. We'd love to have them. So that lets us know we're doing a good job and on the right track. All right. Well, that pretty much does it for this episode. Terry, thanks for jumping on, sharing all this wisdom. Look forward to future episodes. Again, everybody out there, if you got a question on this, drop us a line on that and we'll put you in the queue. And next time we'll be asking Terry a bunch of questions from everybody out there. So thanks for tuning in, and catch you guys later.
Thank you, guys.